said that we'll be using Next.js for our application. So get started and installation. So for that, we'll just do npx this. And I like to use yarn. This is going to be, yeah, more like this. So we're going to run this, and this is going to enable us to use yarn, and then ask the name of the project. So Kanban, just like we did yesterday, TypeScript, ESLint yes, Tailwind CSS no, src document directory yes, recommended yes. So we said, would you like to customize the default import alias? No. So the default, hopefully is what I think it is. I will have said yes, but I think the default one is at /. So if it's not that, then we have to modify it ourselves and provide ourselves with that relative path. So we have two types of file path system, absolute versus relative paths. So a relative path describes the location of the file to the current working directory, and absolute path describes it from the root directory. So basically, if absolute path is just it's where you have something like at this / this, and then let me see just an example so that we understand what that is. So when you have all these dots, / they are all the relative paths. Then an absolute path would be more specific. So this is an absolute path. So you just put / this. There is no dot or any stuff. Then this dot here, once you start accessing the path, then that is the relative path. So that's the relative path. So we'll be using an absolute path because the purpose of an absolute path is that when you move folders around, you don't, when you move files around, you don't have to update your import. Your import remains the same because it's an absolute path. Okay, so our project is set up. So all we have to do is cd Kanban, and then we open up this. So we have our path. So just to verify the absolute path, we go to tsconfig. And yes, we have the absolute path here, so we are fine. So we have the absolute path by default. Okay, so we also resolved that we'll be using a post CSS for Panda CSS, sorry, for our CSS integration to do our CSS. So we'll be using the Panda dev. So all I have to do is this, and then initiate the Panda dev. So to install that, I think I'm using yarn, so let me use yarn add d. So I don't have, the reason I don't use an npm is because when you use an npm, you end up with a package log.json. I already have a yarn log.json, a yarn log. So I don't want to have both package log and a yarn log. So if you're using yarn, you stick with yarn. If you're using npm, you stick with npm, so you don't have two files. It's not good for a project to have to have both a yarn log and a package log.json. That's not good. Okay, so and why is it not good? Because of the purpose of what the log files are for. The log files are to log down the version your app is using. And so if you use npm will not use yarn log. Npm will just check, is it a package log? No. So it's going to basically install new versions of the code, because in your package.json, so these have absolute installations, but most times you could have something like this, something like this, And so just like this, right, this one we just installed now, you can see it has this value here. So the version is not locked. So if the user, your team member does not have yarn and decide to use npm, it's going to look for the latest version, the latest non-breaking version, and it's going to install that rather than using this exact version you have. So your yarn lock will have maybe, let's say, 0.10, but the package json.log.json will now have maybe 0.12 point, maybe 2, something like that, a different version. So there will be a disparity in your version, and if there's any breaking change, automatically the breaking change will affect that user's code. Those using yarn will be fine because they have the yarn lock, but those using the npm will not be fine because their package lock is different. So it's good to just use one version, one package manager, so it's going to be easier for you to work, to manage your 5 versions. So for Next.js, back to our Panda CSS, all we have to do now is just to do Panda init. So we're going to do this. So Panda init, and so this is going to create our Panda files. It's going to create our Panda files, which includes the post CSS config, the Panda the Panda config itself, and then the style system. But the style system is outside here, but I don't want this. So we're going to regenerate this so that it's inside of our SROC. So our style system is not outside of our SROC. So we can also access it via our absolute paths. So for that, I'll add this script, the prepare. So the prepare script is to generate this style system each time you make changes and you need to generate it anew. So the style system is what this style system is what manages your CSS configurations for Panda CSS. Yeah. So I'll just make these changes. I think that's the last one we need to, okay, and this other one. So I'll make that changes. So we'll come to our Panda config. So usually this is looking for every file within our SROC and every file within pages. So this will work if we're using the old TypeScript. We're using the new TypeScript, and so SROC pages is not a path anymore. SROC is not different from pages. So what we have is going to be component, and we're going to have our app itself, right? SROC component and SROC app. So this is a better configuration for us. So then also we would have we want to move our style system into our SROC, so it's going to be SROC / our style system rather than just outside here. So we can delete this other one because we're going to generate a new one. We can delete that. Then also we need a configuration that we don't have. So the last time we checked that, we saw that to implement that we needed to use add something to our Panda config. I think that was JSS framework, and that's React. So we add the JSS framework, and that is React. So that is going to allow us to use styled. So we have in Panda CSS, let me just explain that again. In Panda CSS, we have 3 major ways of styling. We have the style functions, which uses the CSS and the style pattern, circle, and stacks. So basically, you can just call the function and use it in the class name, which is the standard way to do style CSS. Then we have the style prop. So the style prop are like from GSS. So we want to use this, like the box, the stack, or the circle. Those elements, we want to be able to use them. And then the style recipe, this is also like the style function, but a custom function. So this badge can be used as a function inside of your class name, but you can also mix it up with the GSS and also create a component that you can reuse, that you can use in your app. So we will follow this pattern mostly within this application. Okay, so back to the configuration. So we have the prepare, and then we have done our config. So all we have to do is to call the generate again. So we're going to call yarn prepare. We call the script is called prepare from our package.json prepare. So we can call that to generate our style. So it generates it, and it generates it within SROC. So we have our style system now within SROC rather than outside where it was. Okay, so now we're done with the configuration. Then we have to change our within our SROC app, we have to change our global CSS. We have to reconfigure this. So we have to replace it with this. So Control A, and that should take care of that. So that's going to import our base token recipes and utilities functions to be used. Okay, then also we we already have this imported here. So in our layout, we already have global CSS imported here. So while we are here, I will just change the name of this. This is going to be Kanban Board, and so something like this. So this so I will explain layout again. So I think so we have in Next.js. Let's go to the documentation before we finish up our styling. But we are actually done with the styling. But in Node.js, in Next.js, so for routing, we have different ways to route. So we have the app router method, and then we have the page system method. But they are all five system-based router. So where the folder are used to define the route. So when you have something like app, dashboard, and settings, basically each of those concatenation, the app is the root, then we have a dashboard segment, which is dashboard, and then we have the settings, which is that. But for those to work, you have to create a special page called page.js or TSS, like in our own case. And that page.tss is going to be the main page, the entry point for that folder. So for app to work, we have app.page is going to be the root folder, and then for dashboard to work, it has to have page.js, which is going to be the dashboard folder. For settings to work inside of dashboard, it also have to have the page.css. So that's how we have dashboard/settings. But analytics does not have any page.js inside of it, so it's not going to render. So that is basically how that works. So in this example, the dashboard analytics URL is not a public accessible because it does not have page.js. So it can be used to store components, style sheets, or whatever. But we're not going to use that pattern. We'll basically build a folder called components where all the components will be. So yeah, and then you just have to export the function, any function, name it anything, at the root as a default export for that page of CSS, and that's what will render on the page as the route. Okay, coming back here, I think we are done with this configuration. So all we have to do is just to empty up our initial page, which is this. So this is our home page. So we have to empty this up and just use what we have from Panda CSS. So, but before that, I also want to explain layouts. So the difference between a page and a layout. So a page is the view that you see. Then a layout is a UI that wraps pages, multiple pages. So let's say you have so we already explained the page slash and the dashboard slash. But let's say that we have for layout, let's say we have a dashboard and we have layouts, and then we have page.js and we have setting.js. This layout is going to wrap both the page.js and the setting.js. It's going to wrap the both of them. It's going to be available on both of them. On every children of dashboard would have that layout.js. So layout basically is something that is like a wrapper that wraps around every children of a particular page, of a particular section. So I think that's the best way to explain it. It's a UI that wraps around that. So let's say you have maybe you want to put an authentication system for those routes, and say, okay, from this page, from this area, you have to check if the user is authenticated. You can put the hook inside of that layout page, and it's going to check the user is authenticated, and if not, redirect the user maybe to sign up or sign in. You can do that from the layouts also. Okay, seeing that it's going to be used across board, across all your pages, so you can do that there. Okay, so going forward, so let's start our app, so at least we can see something. So yarn dev. So we'll run the app here, localhost 3000. Okay, so we said we're going to remove everything inside of here and just have a div, or let's say main. So inside this main we'll just have an h1, and the h1 we'll just call it the main page. Okay, so we have the main page. Okay, so we then want to have so we said we would want our board page to be something like this. So basically this is the main page, maybe a home page that we'll design later, but our board should be something like this, boards. So we should have this URL. So currently it's 404, so but we should have this URL existing where our page, our board page would be, where all the page designs will be done. So we'll create this page now. So to create it, all we have to do is to create a new folder or file, and then we'll just have boards, and inside of that board we'll now have page.tsx. so this now creates a folder. So we have a folder board, and then we have page.tsx within that. So that would be the page that we're looking for. So we have this here, but now okay, so it's saying that the page component it's not a React component, right? It's not a default export, it's not a React component. So we have to go into pages, and then we have to create export default function boards page, and then we can do a div. I can do a h1 at the moment and just call it boards. Yeah, so we have our page created. Okay, so now that we have gotten to this point, let's now go through what we want to actually build. Let's go to what we want to actually build. So so this is the Figma for what we want to build. So we have our start design system here, which we'll probably use as design tokens. So I think we'll do that first. So we have this design token. This is our colors, our primary colors, or whatever I want to call it. This is our typography, the font we'll be using, and then this is the buttons. So basically this is how we're going to build our buttons. The states of our button, the hover states, the drop down states. This is checkbox, and this is the dark versions of those buttons. I think they are the same thing. Okay, just for the idle, that's white. Yeah, so the rest are the same. And then we have our input. Our input will also style that. So then we have the body too, our text, heading XLMS. So we have all those. So that's what we're going to use within here. So we're going to set this up first before we now start building what we want to build. But before that, we look at here, we can see that here that we have a sidebar, then we have a nav bar, and then we also have a body area or a viewing area which has all the boards. and the columns and the boards itself. So they're all here. And then we have it in dark mode and light mode, and then we have a few modals. So we're going to also build the modal component to manage the modal. And I think, yeah, then we have a pop-up, which is also a modal, but we could build it separately to just be a pop-up. And yeah, mostly that. And then we have also make sure that every component we create is responsive for both tablet and mobile. So let's get on that. So the first thing we're going to do is to create our tokens. So we want to create tokens. So okay, so the last time I also mentioned that I've not used this item before, so we'll basically be learning it for the first time together. So we need to set up a team. So a team. So to set up a team is going to be in Panda config. So this team is where we'll have our breakpoints. It's also where we'll have more like, okay, Panda already have these breakpoints. So we don't need to create a new breakpoint. We just need to set up our colors. So Panda already has this color. We'll just set up our own base colors here, like primary, secondary, and the rest inside of this define config. And then also set up some values, some spacing values, set them up, and some radius. Or we can just use this one. I think this is fine for radius, and then shadow. And okay, this is font sizes. Yeah, so font sizes. Okay, so let's set up what we can set up now from our Kanban board. So coming over here, we'll start with the colors. So I believe this is our primary color. So Panda config theme. Oh, it's already here. So Western colors. Oh, did I get it wrong? Okay, tokens, then colors. Tokens, then colors. So in color, we're going to have primary. And primary is going to be this. Oh, something like this. Okay. So the next one is going to be secondary. So now we can now use these keys in our style. This is font size. The font size is here. So it's going to be H XL, and the XL is going to be 24. Then we'll have HL. HL is going to be 18. Then we'll have HM. HM, which is 615. Then we have HS. HS, which is I think I should start this with small letters. HS5012. Then we'll have BL and BM. BL is 13, and then BM is 12. So you see that most of the things we are doing is to set up what we would need for ourselves, what we'll be needing. I think I'll have to go to dev mode. Yeah, so this is heading M. This is heading M. Yeah. So this is heading M, and this is normal, which is medium, body large, BL. So yeah, so they use different stuff. Okay, so let's build out the. So now that we have the our design system ready, I will just do a prepare once more, and then I'm going to start building out our component. So now that we have that, come over to boards. Okay, outside of app, over here we'll build a new component, a new folder called components. So inside our components, we'll build our first component. It's going to be called button. So we use button.css. They're also going to use the index import. And the reason we want to use the index import is so that to export everything, is so that when we want to import it, we would not have to start accessing /button from our component. We just call /component and to give us the button. This should be inside of index, not inside of button.txt. Then from button.txt, we're going to export. We're not going to export default, we'll just export named export button, and then it's going to be equals to something. Okay, so now I want to start building out this. Build out this button. Differences in export. So I'm going to explain with this component once we create it, and on how exports can be done. Okay. So let's import it somewhere so that we can see how the export goes. So going to have from the app, from the boards, let's test it here. I'm going to have button. So first of all, you see that we have button here. You can see it happens. Ignore this for now. So we have import button, and it came like this from this component. So this is a named export, right? We can also do this. We can also do /button, and it will work. We'll see have this button here, named here. This is called named export. You import it by the name. So even if you want to change the name, you have to do something like button as BT. Maybe BT. So BT becomes the new name, and then you can use BT here, right? So this is how you change the name of a named export. So the other name export we have is called default export, which is what we already used here. But you won't see how it works here because this is used by Next.js directly. So let's go to the button component. I will use it there. So let's say I did a default export here. So for that, I will have to remove this first of all. Then I'm going to now say export default button. So this is named a default export now. And the question is, why didn't I do export default const? This does not work. The only way this will work is if you're using a function. So let's say you're using a function like this. So then you cannot do a named export like this without. So you can do it like this: name default function button. But if you're using a const, you can't define the default directly. So you have to. Maybe later on I will explain why you do this. So you just do export default the button, and this becomes a default export, or the other way around with a function or a class. So for class, you also do export default class. You can do that directly, and then the class name. Yeah, so you can do that directly. So if I remove this, this should work. So you can do this for class. You can also do this for function. Default export default function, right? So this is a default export, and then this is a named export. If I do export const, this is named export. If I remove this default here, this is also a named export. The name of this export will be this. Also for classes, if I remove this, this becomes a named export. The name of the export becomes whatever the name of this is. So that's named export. So named export, that when you import it, it's going to use that name generated. But for a default export, it means that the whole file itself is that item. That item is the whole file. It doesn't contain any other thing again. That is the assumption. So which means that if I come to index, this is not going to work, because when you do export star this, what this is going to export is going to be funny. Now let's look at this. Because if I did this already from button, and button is doing a default export. What is actually doing at this default? So let's see. If I come to pages, you can see I don't have button here, right? But I can do this. I can do default. There's a default here, right? But you're not actually allowed to use this. So there's a default here. So which means that I can just do, so if I'm importing directly from button, I can do button like this. Right, so this is the same thing. This is correct. This is a default export. So you don't need to do the curly braces, no named export. But this also means I can just give it any name I want. Any name I want is fine, and it should work the same way with no issues. It's not a named export. Named export means it's already had a name. But a default export means that you can give it a name when you're importing it, and it imports the whole file. So there's no curly braces to import children, to import its children. It's just on its own, right? There's no curly braces. So that's the major difference between the two of them. And which should you use is still your preferences. If you want to, if you're building a component, a file that which we will do like utility files that export multiple functions, named export will be better. If you're doing a component, because the fact I want to use this kind of export, because with this default export, if I come over here now, I can't do button, and I can't also do button like this. You see, it's not working, and I can't. Can I do this? I'm not allowed to use this, right? This is not even available. So it means that that export is not going to work. I think if I do this, I think I can do this dot. Can I? I don't think so. Okay. Export this does not re-export as default, a default. So you see it, the error shows here. So export star does not re-export a default. So which means that if I want to export button here, just like we wanted here, let's say I want to still do this. By exporting the button as default, what I'll have to now do is come over here. I'm going to export, I think I can do this. No, I have to do this. I have to import, sorry. I have to import the button first of all. Then I have a giant export to export everything I've imported. So I can import another guy here, maybe button 1. And then button 1 will now be going over here. Alright? So we now have button 1 and button inside of here. But I have to do large imports of everything here, which is more like I'm doing 2 lines for everything. So but I'll do this and I'll do this. Which is why the star export is much more preferable, because you can just export all the named export within it at once. Even though it's one file that is there, it exports everything at once. So that way, if you still come back to page with what we have now, the button works. Now you also have button 1. You can see button 1 is here too. So, and they're basically the same export. Okay, so I believe that should have explained that. So we go to the next, we go back to what we were doing before, which is to export our components as named exports, as this export. So I'll remove all this. So that means I can go back to doing export star from button, and this should work, and our page should have what it needs back, which is this. Okay, so this is saying that our component is not a JSS because we are returning void. To fix that, all we have to do is return something, even if it's null, and that should fix that. We are returning something now. And if you go to the UI, you basically see nothing. So you can see nothing is here. So we'll say const button recipe. So this recipe, it's nothing special, so it doesn't confuse. This button recipe is basically a mixture, a configuration for the CSS styling, so we don't have to do it again. Okay, that's what this is basically is. We don't have to do it again. It does it for us. We do it once and then reuse it over and over again. So it's the same styling as a style component. If I used style component before, and it's also the same thing as styling with CSS, but now in a more neat way and more reusable way. Okay, so we have this button here, and then our export const button will now be styled from GSS, which is just button, and then take this button CVV to style that button. So it's going to take the button, this button component from so if you look at here, it takes a component. The component is the component from normal Java HTML. So we are using the button element in HTML, and then we're going to apply all these styles here to that button element. That's simply what we're doing here. So that way, just by using the default one, when we come back here, we should be able to see something. Nothing is there. So variant is this. So for the base, this we should have color as black. Okay, we have to also pass a label. Okay, we have to pass a child button. Let's say click me. So now we have that click me. So this is the click me button. So let's finish up this styling by coming over here and styling the first button. So the first button we have, I think it just has a minimum width of 255, which I could also be wrong because the width of this is 164. So last time we decided that we'll use padding for the width to ascertain the width of the text from the parent. Then we can also give it a minimum width of 164, and then make sure it has a padding of at least 24 and 14 up and down. Alright, so to do that, we would come back to the button component, and so we would have padding X is going to be, so this 4 could mean, let's see, in their style props tokens. Okay, team. So spacing 4 is 1 REM and 5 is 1.25 REM. REM is better to work with because the file is by default responsive. So, but due to the fact that we're using our design is in pixel. Let me see if we can modify that. It's in pixel. I don't think we can modify that. Okay, so it's in pixel. Oh, we have RAM. Okay, yeah, that's fine. So this is 1.5. So I think this will be much better for us to work with. So 1.5 is 6, 1.25 is 5, and then 4 is 1 RAM. So checking that, we have 0.94 here, so which is, we don't have 0.94, so basically we use 4, we use 1 rem for the top, and then we use 6 for the left and right. Okay, so we'll come back here. This is going to be 6, and this is going to be 4. Was it 4? Yeah, 4. Okay, so I think that solves that. Then we can have variant. The background should be primary, and then the color should be white. Okay, same. I think for now we just have only one variant. Okay, we have secondary here, so the color is primary and the background is secondary. So this is secondary and this is primary. Okay, so let's test that. So coming to page board, so I'm going to come here and do variant primary. So by doing that, coming back here, so we have this. I think this looks good. And then if I check the secondary, okay, then okay, so I think that is fine. Then we can have size. Size will have LG. So for LG, we would have so I think this padding is a lot, so we can just reduce that to 3. Yeah, that's better. So coming back here, we have this to be font size of 0.8125. Okay. Zero point eight one two five. So what we have here is 0.875 rem. I think we might just have to modify the sizes that we had if there's a need for that. But this is normal, I think. Let me just switch that for a moment. Yeah, so this is 13 and it's bold, so that's supposed to be, so it's 13 and then it's bold. That's supposed to be body, BL. So so font size going to BL, and then font with bold, I think it's bold at 700. Okay, I don't think this background color is what I used. 635. Okay, coming over to our config, 635. Oh, this is the background. So this is the background. So I think I might have to do another one called BG secondary. Okay, so with that, I think I can make this background this then just y prepare. So each time you modify the panda config, you have to run the panda prepare code gen, and I think that should give us, yeah, that is what we need. Then I'll just do pointer cursor. So cursor pointer. Okay, so that we can have the hand when we click. Then we can also have an activity that happens when we click on the button, just to do some kind of animation, just to show that the button has been clicked. So we have scale. Then so if I click on this, you can see that effect of the button clicking. It's because of the active transformation. So when the item is active, in CSS you just do let me get a CSS file. So in CSS you will just do, so let's say the class name is text button btn. So you will do something like active, like this, and then you just transform scale this. So this is the equivalent in CSS. So this would give you the same effect as what we just did here. Yeah, so this is just in JS, but that's a similar CSS effect. So that would allow you to have that little effect of the button is clicking. Then the next thing I want to do is to give it border radius. So if I give it a border radius of full, because I think all the buttons are rounded, that should give us a rounded button, which is fine, which is what we just needed. So now we have seen how to build a singular component, and we'll build upon this knowledge incrementally. So let's build out the UI for our stuff. So the last time we said we will use we would build components, small components, but let's do the layering, like let's just do a simple layering. So for that we would do class name, but we'll use something called the CSS from the style CSS, style GSCSS. I think we should use from this style system, and then inside of here okay, let me just come over here to explain it. So we have this card. So this card is going to shrink every single time. So we have two ways to do it. We can make this card like this section. It divides from the top section, saying that when it collapses, this top part is left here. There's still a top part left here. So we can maintain it that way, right? And then it's just going to collapse this bottom part, right? So if we do that, it's fine. It's still truncates that. And another way to do it is just to move this whole item as one. And if we do that and we move everything as one, it means we have to find a way to bring back this logo up here. We have to find a way to bring back the logo up here in this other component. So I think we'll go with leaving it as a bottom part, where this item just stays at the bottom and then it collapses, and then leave this top here remain, the top here remain. I think we'll go with that. That will be easier to build and easier to understand. So with that being said, I'm going to try to draw around to show how I would be building this. If I okay, so basically we would build this entire row. First of all, this entire row on top. So it means our component here is going to be a column row to have two sections. this entire bottom section and this top section. Then in the top section, in the bottom section, we will now split it into two. This sidebar and this body. Okay, and then inside of this body, then that way every other thing will now flow within this. If that is clear. Is that clear? Okay, I want to believe it's clear. So we would go ahead with that. So this is going to be display flex. So the height is going to be 100 VH, which is the height of your screen. VH is the height of your screen, and so it's not going to move around. And then we're going to do flex direction because the normal direction is row, so we want to make it to go from top to bottom. So it goes from top to bottom, and I think that should take care of that for us. There's nothing else to do here. We can also do the width. The width will be 100 VH. I think we can just use H and W here. I don't know if we can just use D. No. Okay. So now inside here we're going to have the first child. The first child is going to be the nav bar. So we have this first child nav bar. I think I'll just duplicate this because the same thing we'll be using actually. So we have the first child with the nav bar. So it's a display flex. The width is 100 VW. So this is VW. And it doesn't have a flex direction, it just has a minimum height. So the height is going to be about, I think, 90 pixels. Let's verify that. So we have 96 pixels. 96 pixels. We'll give it a background color, let's say BG secondary, so that we can see something. So this top part now we're seeing is the nav bar. You can see it doesn't scroll away, it remains on the screen. So we're going to do the bottom body part. We can just pick the same thing. Now this is going to just be simpler. The width is going to be 100 VH. It's going to be a flex one, which means take the remaining size of its parent container. So if we give it a background color of red 100, is it red 1 or 10? I thought I had the color 100 VH flex 1. Okay, let us do a red. Yeah, so this is it. So this entire bottom part is going to be the part we'll divide into the sidebar and the bar itself. So the key to making the sidebar and the bar flow together is to basically give it the same color, so they'll just feel like they are attached to each other. So inside of here, I'm going to add the sidebar. So the sidebar, now calculating the height is going to be tricky, but yeah, so that is going to be where we will have the issue to play with. But it's already quite easy, since that we have the height as 96 and there's no margin around it, then it's easy to calculate. So I'm going to do BG to be the same color. I'm going to remove the flex one. I'm going to remove the width. The width is supposed to be 300. So 300 pixels. So now I have done that, but still we don't have anything here because we're supposed to provide a height. So I can tell it to take the height of full, which is going to make it take this height. And I think that works, seeing that we have this parameter full, so it works for us. So it takes the remaining height of the parent. We're going to remove red from this guy so that we can see what's happening. So you can see it blends perfectly with the top. So we're going to use the color, the original color, just to get the feel of what is happening. So we'll come to design, this color is 2b2c. Okay, so coming to our Panda config 2. So this is the, I think I should close this. So coming to our Panda config, we have 2b2c3, so that is black 300. So this is going to be black 300 and black 300. So yeah, so that is more like it. Then also if you look at here, I don't think it has a outline. There's an outline. So I think we can fix that outline. I think the outline is 3E3. That is 3E3. That should be the black 400. Yes. So we will do the cutout so it feels like this top one is part of the top of the bottom. So let's just quickly do that stuff. So here we're going to have a border right. So we have solid this, and then we now have border right color, and then we have black 400. Okay, you will not see any difference now. So let me do this second section, right? So for the second section of this item, okay, I think I could just do the body itself. So for the body, we would not need we will need flex 1. Then I can give it a background color of this color here. I think this is very dark gray, which is 2021C, which is our black 200. Okay, so this is black 200. So this is going to be BG of black 200. So that's going to give us, okay, so we have flex 1, which means it's taking the entire height of its width of its parent. Then we need to give it the height of full, so it takes the entire, wait, let's see, where is this item? Oh, it's here. Okay, so what's happening is that their parent, so this is their parent, yes. So this is our nav bar, and then this is the parent of the child. So this is supposed to have, so you just have flex 1. It's supposed to have a display of flex, which is going to now make it to be flex row. So just by putting that display of flex, and so it's row, so this item is now in the same row, so they are not sharing child parents. So we can see that here we have this line. You can see that line for this sidebar. So we need to extend that line upwards also. So to do that, we just need to, so we need to extend that line also. I don't know, yeah, just left and right. So to do that, we'll come to this flex here, and we're going to, this nav bar, we're going to give it a display flex also. Display flex. Oh, it already has a display flex. Okay, so now we just need another div inside, 2 divs inside of it. So 2 divs inside of it. So one of the div would be, the width is going to be the same width as the nav bar, which is 300 pixel. So 300 pixel. The height, it's technically height of the parent, so it's fine. And the color, don't worry about the color, it takes the color of the parent. Then this other one is going to be flex 1, but it's not going to have a border color. So we would give it, so this is it. So we'll give it border right of 1 pixel solid. And then we're going to give it border color. We'll just do a border color. Then we'll do a border left 1 pixel solid, and then border bottom bottom. Yeah. So with that, we should have, yeah, so the two lines should nearly meet. Yeah, so it should nearly meet. So, and that should give us that flow between the two of them. So yes, we can also add some extra parameters to make them blend more, but at least for now, this is okay and basic. Then the scrolling part of this, to make the other child scroll. So we have height full, and then border overflow auto, which will allow it to flow when the child is excess. And then this is their parent. Yes, so this should also be overflow hidden, so that it doesn't show beyond that point. Okay, so I think that is mostly that. Okay, then this also overflow. Okay, this already have overflow hidden, so we are covered. So this covers for the sidebar and the nav bar itself. So I think what we're going to do all the time. This is 128. Okay, we still have about 30 minutes more. So what we want to do is that we're going to move each of them, because if you look at this is kind of very difficult to see what's happening here. So we're going to move each of them into their own components and then import them back into here. So the first one I'm going to move into a component is the nav bar, which is this. So we're going to come over here, create a new nav bar, CSS, export as nav bar, then import CSS. Then import React. Where's the complaint? Element is not assignable to type string. Oh, I imported CSS from the wrong place. Okay, so I think that should take care of that. So navbar, we can now bring back navbar to this page and import that. Okay, I need to export it from here. So navbar. Okay, then we need two other components. We need sidebar .css, and we also need board container .css. So we're going to export all of this from here. Sidebar and board container. Then we just do the same thing we did in navbar in each of them. Sidebar and board nav. Okay, then we would start importing them from their respective places. So navbar, so this is the parent container for both of them. So this is the sidebar. So I'm going to move this sidebar to here, to sidebar. Okay, then move this other one to board container. Okay, then inside of here I would just have sidebar and board container. Okay, And so the only thing we have is just the parents holding them, and so it's easier to view and see what's happening. And yeah, so we still have the same thing. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do the closing for this item. So basically it can open and close. I think we can do that much for it. Then we can continue from placing components in in the um, in the pages, placing its various components like the cards, the column, and then maybe adding new column. I think that's what we'll do in the next class. In this next class, rendering these items here and adding columns and items to the column. So now I will do the hide sidebar, this section of the sidebar. So we'll just do that. So we'll do something that is different from what we've been doing. So for the hide sidebar, so we'll come over here. So I'm going to have a box. So this box is going to have flex. One. And then we'll have another box over here where we'll now have the let's say button. We could use the button component, I guess. Okay, then we'll just have hide sidebar. So that's going to push that. So we have this hide sidebar here. Color gray 100. So the color here is 828. 828. That's gray 300. Number. Okay, now sidebar. So that's gray 300. That should give us that. Okay, so we have that button here. So what we want to do is to make sure everything pushes this item to the bottom, which is what we tried here, and it seems like it didn't work. Yes, it didn't work. So the height is, I think we have to give it a display of flex for that to work. And then flex direction is column. Yeah, so that works now. Then I think we can give a padding. Okay, there's no need for padding. We just need to put the padding at the bottom box, which is 31, 24. Okay, 24. So there's going to be padding px here for 24 pixel, and then the bottom one is 47. So we'll do py of 47 pixel. So now, if you look at this, you see that this UI is easier to read than what we have here. So we're going to convert this to this. So I'll put this back to 1, and I think it should be fine. Yeah. So I'm going to convert that. So I'm going to have box here, and then I'll just have width of 300 pixel, BG of black 300, H, which is the height, is full, border height, this 1 pixel solid, border height color, thank you, and flex direction should be column. So if I remove these classes, we should have the same thing. So you can see nothing change, and this is much more React like. So we'll use this instead of using that. So next time we want to create divs, we'll use the box rather than using the CSS functions. So we'll use the CSS function when we are creating our own components. So okay, so so with this, we now have our hide sidebar. Now let's try to do a how will I put it, a function. So I'm going to do transition all should take 0.5 is in out. So this is going to manage how this item flow. Now let's create a, so we have our width to be 300 here. Now let's create a state to manage our what's happening. Okay, this is supposed to be this, then we'll return the box. Okay, so this is to show if the sidebar is open or not. So if it's open, do hide sidebar. If it's closed, do open sidebar. Though this will not be visible, so yeah, you get the point. So something else will be showing on this part. So by default, it should be 2. So show sidebar should be 2. I think I'm supposed to use client. Yeah. So I will have to add that here. Cannot access sidebar that initialization. Okay, so let's use let's come to page, board page, and add this. Yeah, so by doing it in the parent, it affects the children. So then that takes care of that. So the use client is just something that Next.js introduced to differentiate client component, server generated component, and client generated component. So that's what we just have this use client for. So it knows what to host to the server, pull directly from the server, and what to also allow to run from the web. So that's why it has this. So it's easy for you to know how to build the component. Okay, so back to what we were doing. So we have the use effects here, and then we'll just click, so we can set this to be what it was before. Okay, so now if I hit this, you can see the open sidebar is changing. But now let's now change this stuff. So if there's open sidebar is this, then if not, we just leave it as 0. So if I hide sidebar, so you can see it hides. But I don't think the transition is working. Width 0.05 seconds. Okay, let's try that. Okay, yeah, that worked. So that is 0.5 seconds. Okay, so you can see because the transition from the time it moves from 300 pixel to 0 pixel is that 300 that you saw. So that's what is now used to animate it. Do you get? That's what it uses to animate the sidebar, so it hides the sidebar. So we can also see the border right color should also be transparent, should also disappear if the sidebar is not open. So okay, Onset is black, red, okay, let me do this. Okay, that's better. So we set the border, so there's no border at all at that point. So, but every other thing remains as it should be. So now let's pop it back up. In the few minutes we'll have left, let's pop it back up. To pop it back up, we need this. So we're going to create this. This is basically an absolute component, but it's part of our component. So we can make it fixed, not even absolute. We can make it fixed, and it just remains where it is, something like that. So at the moment, I don't want to bring in icons now, so we'll bring in icons on tomorrow. But it seems like this whole item is an icon itself, the way it was designed. Yeah, it's an icon itself. So I'll have to bring it in at this point. Okay, so this is it. I'm going to copy this. So we'll use this to see how to set up our icons. So for our icons, we'll have something called a folder called assets. So instead of assets, we'll now have SVGs. So I'll now create a new one called sidebar i.svg, and then I paste this, so we have this. Okay, so we're going to now use this as a component. So if I import sidebar I would import it from assets svgs and side. Okay, let me use the next image, next image, src. It works, seriously. So I think it's something that has to do with Next.js. Yeah, it still works. You see, it still works. So I think it's Next.js that is doing something about this, that is doing something to this. We forgive them, at least it's working. Okay, so we're going to use a box. Put this guy inside the box. Then that box is going to be it's going to be position fixed. Yeah, so position fixed. So but we want it to be just a few meters away from the bottom, which is 32. So we'll say bottom 32 pixel. So that should bring it to where we need it to be. Exactly. I think also we should wrap this with a button. The button is going to add a padding to it. So I think we might have to click this directly. Roll button. So we can be able to click it. Yeah, so I'll do that. So we'll click it from here. Cursor, pointer. So enable us have that clickable stuff. So now we have the button where we need it to be, but we also need it to move to the right. So if we say the left, if you make it left, so it's currently at 0. Okay, so this is 300 pixels at the bottom of here, but we need it to be at 0. So we have to do minus its body. So its width is 56. So we'll do minus 56 pixel. So I don't know if this transition is going to work on transforms yeah, but let's try. Okay, so then we hide, so it doesn't work on it. Then we click on this. Okay, we're not yet done work on that. Okay, so we have to find a way so our transform can work, our transition, so it can slide in, right? So we probably have to put a box inside that box. Then the second box is going to have the transition in it, and then the first box will now have a pointer event, and then the second one can have a pointer event, so that, okay, we can have a pointer event when there is no stuff, so that it doesn't block the height sidebar from working. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so we have it moving like this, which is fine, but I'm going to copy this whole stuff and put it as a child. Then remove this is the parent part, we don't need that. Then here we don't need these ones here too. So yeah, so we have something like this, so which is basically the same thing. It's basically the same thing. The only difference is that with this one being inside here, not moving, this guy is not moving, this is the item moving, then we can say, rather than moving it out to the screen, we already have the left, because left is 0 by default. So what we'll just here, we'll make this the width. So the width will be 56. When the sidebar is closed, it's going to be open, it's going to be 0, then 56 here. So yeah, so it's closed now, so it's 56. So that way it also compresses and it looks like it's sliding in also. And let's test that. So we'll put on here, we'll put an on click. I think I'll put the row button here on this box. So we put the on click on it. So if I do this, so you see what happens, right? It scales, the buttons, the size reduces. So it does that, gives us that seamless effect, right? So also I think I'll just leave this one as hide button, hide sidebar. I think that should be fine. Then we can also give this guy an opacity that changes when the button has been clicked. So basically, once the sidebar button is clicked, it changes opacity. So we can give it opacity. So, and then we can say transition opacity, but rather than 0.0, we'll make it faster, 0.05 seconds. So it comes out faster than, right? So so it's up. Let's see. Do we have transition duration? Okay. I think we can just do ease out. Let's see. So it still appears before other people, which is a problem. So I think what we can just do is ease in, out. Then we'll put a transition duration delay, and so if the sidebar is open, which means it's currently open, the delay, there should be no delay. The sidebar is currently open, which is making the opacity 1. There should be a delay, yes. But if it's sending to 0, there should be no delay. Yeah, so that is fine. So if we do this, we have this, and then I don't think this delay is working. So I don't think the delay is working. So you're supposed to wait for 0.5 seconds of this to move out, to open up before it does anything. So it works fine for opening, right? Because when you open, it waits small before it pops up, which is fine. Which should actually be 0.5. Right, so it should actually be 0.5. Alright, but when you're closing it, it doesn't, it delays, which is not good. That delay is not good, and so that's what this is supposed to fix. But it seems like it's not working as it should be. It seems like it's not working as it should be. So it comes out quite early. Okay, so I think we'll leave it for now. At this, our time, we just have 3 more minutes, and so far we have been able to lay out our sides, our sidebar, the nav bar, and we're able to also hide our nav bar so we can see it in full screen mode. How based on our design, been able to see it without the sidebar and with the sidebar. So next we'll start building out the sidebar.